And welcome to another exciting episode of Chip Talks Podcast. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're not going to dive into the endocannabinoid system, your master regulatory system, and talk about it today. We're not going to talk about what's going on in the processed food industry or the pharmaceutical industry that might, help you or hurt you. So we're going to talk a little bit about politics today, and we're going to talk a little bit about cannabis. And again, I work very, very hard to try to get you guys to understand that this endocannabinoid system that we all have, our master regulatory system, really has nothing to do with cannabis. Cannabis is a way to impact it, just like turmeric is a way to impact other systems inside your body. So cannabis is just a natural food substitute, supplement that can impact the system. The system is, more important than any plant. It is our master regulatory system. It's involved in every process and change and anything that we're trying to do inside of us. So, it's different and should be intellectually separated from cannabis. All right. But yet, most of us still kind of go there, and cannabis is a nice way to impact the system. So a lot of us who are working on the system and ways to manipulate it and ways to help you and ways to educate you, cannabis is a really good, way to do that. Okay. So, but cannabis is not the only way to do it. And in fact, I hold patents around doing it with no cannabis, right? So my patents have to do with engineering into the endocannabinoid system with things like black pepper and, glyceric acid from licorice and curcumin and all that good stuff. So there's lots of things that you can do to impact the endocannabinoid system without cannabis. All right. So, but let's talk about cannabis for a second, because I think cannabis is a really important tip of the spear thing that kind of breaks down our understanding of the current pharmaceutical system and the current processed food system. So believe it or not, cannabis is kind of a wedge to get in there and kind of begin to open up our awareness about things. So I think it's really important. And I think it's really important how we view it and how, that it's available to us, it's available to grow, where we don't have to have a, doctor or a, pharma representative in between kind of us and God's expression of nature. So as an activist, I've worked really, really hard to make that happen. And in fact, was, intimately involved, let's say, in making that happen in Oklahoma. But I also watch this around the country, and I watch this as, like, let's say, a pundit and kind of a, spiritual commentary guy and all those type things, because I'm watching for this development. So all that to say this, in the last 6 months, there has been more happening with, let's say, cannabis than there ever has in my lifetime. In my lifetime, I was born I'm old, so I'm going to tell you when I was born, but I was born in 1960. And so I got to see the whole, kind of hippie movement. I was kind of little, but I remember it all, but got to see the whole kind of hippie movement develop and how that, happened, and how the big push for, not only just marijuana, but some other kind of, useful drugs, like, some hallucinogens have quite a bit of medical value. So there's been people pushing for that since, let's say, 1972, since, Nixon launched his war on drugs, right? So there's been this whole other push. And there's never been any movement. I mean, there has been on the hallucinogens front, but not on, medical cannabis or medical marijuana. So the federal government has never moved, trying to get anyone that was other than, let's say, a very extreme leftist political candidate to run on a marijuana platform was impossible. It's still impossible, with one very notable change we'll talk about in a second. But getting a politician to talk about cannabis or marijuana was super difficult, certainly on, when they're stumping for political office. And then once they're elected, going to have a conversation with them about cannabis is just unbelievable. I'll tell you about some of those that I've had in a second. So, this is something that's been absolutely taboo, let's say, for the political institution. So there hasn't been any politicians that have ever really embraced marijuana. Now, Biden kind of ran on it, right? So you'll recall that Biden ran on safe banking, for, let's say, commercial cannabis industry, and Biden ran on, kind of descheduling, if you will, although I don't think he ever directly stated that. But we've seen in April a indication from the Biden administration that they would reschedule cannabis from a Schedule 1 narcotic. So right now it's scheduled. If you're a pharmaceutical company and you want to go study marijuana as a thing, the way that it's classified will restrict you from. It won't restrict you from doing it, but why would you spend money other than Jazz? And they very bravely did this. But again, why would you develop a drug that literally is classified this way? It's horribly dangerous, addictive, and has no medical value. So that's the way cannabis is classified right now. By the way, when I say cannabis, I'm talking about the plant. All right. When I say hemp, I'm talking about the plant that has less than 0.3% THC. When I say marijuana, I'm talking about the plant that has more than 0.3% THC. Marijuana is a legal definition and hemp is a legal definition. Cannabis is the plant. So you'll hear people, again, OGs will always say cannabis, and there's a whole, folklore around all that. But anyway, so super important, right, that we look at this cannabis and kind of what's going on right now. So back to my point of no politician would ever really consider this or talk about it or anything. And I'll tell you a quick story about something that I had happen. So I was helping a Republican candidate for U.S. Senator here in Oklahoma run for office. And so he was supportive of medical marijuana. And so, that kind of roped me in right away. And I began to think about ways where we could, use his position to help him to gain more votes. So we wrote him a position paper, a 1-page position paper that we hope to get published in, major media. I mean, it's kind of a big deal. This guy's a preacher, a very conservative preacher here in Oklahoma that was running for U.S. Senate. So highly unusual that he would be kind of, non-linear, let's say, that he would be supportive of medical marijuana, but he was. And so we wrote him a position paper, which he, obviously was part of and adopted and agreed to. But we tried to get his position published in media because it was really important, and it's important to Oklahomans. I mean, Oklahomans want to know where, our U.S. senators, clearly our current U.S. senators are not very favorable on medical marijuana. But that needs to be a political issue, right? It needs to be something that's vetted in an election. We need to talk about those things. Instead, what happened, I could not get any major media. And again, I know a lot of, let's say, writers for major media, and I had conversations with them. And they said, no, our editors will never publish this, which was just fascinating to me. Why not? Why would an editor not publish a favorable medical marijuana position from a conservative Republican candidate? That seems super newsworthy to me and super interesting and, something I'd want to read about. But anyway, they won't do it. So, how do you break that? How do you break this? Even if you decide that you're favorable on medical marijuana or adult use, or it doesn't really matter, your position will never get heard because no media will ever publish it unless, you're a very far leaning, leftist Democrat, right? And then they will. But that's about it. So even RFK Jr.'s position on marijuana is not, who knows it? Who in this room knows RFK Jr.'s position on medical marijuana? Again, I do because I just read it, but I wouldn't have known in depth if I hadn't just read it. So, again, this needs to be vetted. It needs to be part of over 75% of us agree with medical marijuana. I mean, it's actually over 80. I just sort of go to 75 just in case there's a bunch of conservative Christians or something listening right now. So, but over 75% of us agree with medical marijuana. So it's not like it's an unsafe place to go. It's not like it's the third rail of politics. I'll never touch that. That'll electrocute me, right? So no, it's a very safe position to take now, and it's a very majority position to take. And yet you have really no conservative politician or no really middle of the road, even politicians go there. I find that fascinating, don't you? But again, in the great stuff that's happened in the last 6 months, again, so the first thing that happened in the last 6 months is the Biden administration indicating that they might reschedule marijuana to a Schedule III narcotic. So that should have every single pharmaceutical company in the world just doing backflips. Oh my gosh, now we can actually study this, and now we can actually kind of dive in. This is something people want, and this is something that people are responding to. And gosh, we can, begin to spend our research dollars here now, because it's no longer unsafe, addictive, and has no medical value. If it gets rescheduled, it has medical value. It has somewhat of a safety profile, and it's not harmful. Well, it's, has a safety profile, let's just say. So again, just descheduling at the federal level, or rescheduling, allows all of this new activity for drug development. And this is why it's so important to address things at the federal level. So there's sort of a federal aspect to this, and we'll talk about this in a second. And then there's a state aspect to this. And I think that the handwriting is on the wall as to how this is going to go. So I'll lay that out for you in a second. But let's continue to talk a little bit more about the amazing last 6 months. So what's happened in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Well, Donald J. Trump, a major conservative Republican candidate for president, has come out and not only said that he would support medical marijuana, which is sort of step one in the marijuana acceptance platform. He said he's going to accept adult use marijuana, and he's going to vote for it. That changes everything. So gone are the days where no media will publish that position anymore, because now Donald Trump is for it. So now getting my candidate's position published in major media should be much easier now, because we've had a major, kind of home run big league hitter break that veil. So that's super interesting. And that also now gives every single Republican, let's say, pundit permission to grill their candidates on medical marijuana. And we all should be. I want to know, if I'm sending somebody to Washington, I darn sure better know what their position is on medical marijuana. And this is important because this will affect your health later. So again, just let me get to that part. Okay. But this change that has really happened by Donald Trump's acceptance and, sort of acknowledgement and, saying that he's going to vote for adult use in Florida has completely changed the world as to medical marijuana, as to adult use, as to everything, right? So it used to be in marijuana, we would try to get as much as we could get. So in like a state regulatory situation, again, it's going to be easier to get a medical program, and it's more accepted. Like in Oklahoma, when I was polling this before we, actually got the law done here and everything in Oklahoma, when I was polling this, medical would always poll in the high 50s, low 60s, as far as Oklahomans and kind of their beliefs and what they thought about it. And adult use would always poll about 45%. So, full on recreational marijuana would always poll about 45%. So about a, 15, 20% delta there. So, what states have done is kind of use that information to try to kind of get what they can get, and then add to that, as they've sort of demonstrated safety and that, again, rainbows and unicorns and horrible things aren't going to, fall from the sky and happen just because we, instituted our medical marijuana program. So, states have conservatively kind of dipped a toe in. Some states now have adult use programs, but, adult use was kind of as an activist, that was the biggest ask that you could ever ask of a population, right? So we're going to try to get adult use marijuana. And another group, it wasn't my group, but it was another group here in Oklahoma. It was an out-of-state group, which was horrible. It was a move on, kind of a open approach effort to influence our elections here in Oklahoma, our November election. But we had an out-of-state group come in and get an adult use on our ballot, and it was summarily rejected by Oklahomans, which I was very, excited to see, because again, it would have hurt our existing law and done a bunch of bad stuff. But anyway, that was voted down by Oklahomans. So that was, good for my peeps out there, good for we the people. We saw through that one and fought it back. But anyway, adult use has always been the kind of the difficult thing to get as far as a state. And it's kind of got to be done right. It's got to be, the regulations around it, let's say, have to be proper and done right. And what we had offered here in Oklahoma before there was not right. Everybody knew it, and we didn't support it. We communicated that. So again, good luck with that. Good luck coming into Oklahoma and beating my ground game. And we had the group try to do that. And it's not just my ground game; it's several people's ground game, but it's pretty strong. But anyway, so how's this going to go? How's this going to go? Like now, so we've got Trump signaling this. We've got very interesting kind of movement and activity beginning to happen in states around Trump's announcement. So here's how I think this is going to shake out and what this is going to look like. And again, I'm going to assume that, again, and I don't want to make this a political thing, but I'm just going by odds and statistics and what I hear people saying and what I see in the polling and kind of how I see the winds blowing. I think Trump's likely going to win. If Trump wins this election, again, what is also going to happen, and this was another big thing that's happened the last month, is he's likely going to bring in somebody like RFK Jr. to run HHS. Okay. So why does that matter to anyone in marijuana or anyone in cannabis at all? Well, again, if you listen to what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying, he's going to completely change like the education around the food pyramid, around processed foods, around likely pharmaceuticals, around a bunch of stuff. So we're going to start telling the truth in this country. Maybe that would be cool, wouldn't it? And it sounds like that if all this happens, that we are going to start telling the truth, which is really cool. And if we do start telling the truth, and we start telling the truth about medical marijuana, and we start telling the truth about food, and we start telling the truth about your health, then, again, let's say an education about the endocannabinoid system has to be part of that conversation. I can't tell you the truth about how you work without teaching you about your master regulatory system. It's just impossible. I mean, it would be like, I'm going to teach you how your car gets down the road without telling you about the engine. Go. So it's just impossible. Right? I can't tell you the truth about how you work without talking about the endocannabinoid system. And we know that cannabis is a great supplement to impact the endocannabinoid system, your master regulatory system. So to think that this isn't going to be part of health is folly. It's absolutely will be part of health. It's just a question of when, how much, and how it's going to come about. So it looked like that maybe with a Trump, and this was a year ago, it looked like maybe with an incoming Trump administration that we would nibble away at this, that we might be able to make some changes at the FDA that would, or reschedule cannabis and the DEA, make some changes, in the federal government where we would begin to nibble away, maybe put more research dollars toward, cannabis research and marijuana research and especially endocannabinoid research. Good Lord, you don't even need, a Schedule I narcotic now to study the endocannabinoid system. You can study it with black pepper. And stay with turmeric, right? But the dollars aren't there to do that yet, right? So we need that federal focus. So we were all thinking, well, this is kind of, we're going to nibble in the next 4 years. If Trump gets elected, it'll be great. And, we'll make progress and movement into research and, telling the truth here, let's just say. But with the kind of the announcement of RFK Jr., nobody knows what he's going to do yet, but it's pretty obvious that he's going to be, involved in health and processed food and kind of bringing about a new paradigm and a new educational awareness and all that, which is super exciting, but basically going to tell us the truth. The food pyramid is such a joke and a lie. It's going to let's say not extend your lifespan. So your lifespan will be average or less than average if you eat according to the food pyramid. If you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like is suggested, again, same thing. So there's just so much education and so much truth telling that we need to begin to do. And from my perspective, it's just blowing me away. I mean, my jaw is almost on the floor every day as we're getting kind of these announcements coming out about what's going to happen. So look like we're going to be nibbling now with this RFK Jr. announcement. It looks like we're going to be actively working on programs to begin to tell you the truth about kind of what you should eat, how frequently you should eat, when you should eat, what that does to your master regulatory system. Are there ways you can optimize your master regulatory system? Are there things you shouldn't eat? Are there things you should eat? So we're going to get into all that, it looks like. So how exciting is that? And again, I'm kind of taking all this from, several different data points, but certainly the RFK Jr. Concession, and then what he said about a potential role helping Trump and the fact that he is helping Trump. And then I'm also taking this from basically the way that the cannabis announcements are going. I think, that's stunning and spectacular, and just means that this wall is going to fall down. So the big picture here has always been, again, it's a nice business model. If I can stand, and it's evil, but it's, works. If I can stand between you and God, so if I can stand between God's expression of something and you, and sell that to you, make you buy it from me, well, you're going to see a lot of that in our society, right? But that's exactly what's happened. You kind of have this pharmaceutical and medical system that stands between us and God's expression. And God's expression is everywhere in nature. Cannabis is a part of God's expression, but so is turmeric and black pepper and ginger and red clover. And, there's just all of these great medicines out in God's system. Now it's up to us to figure out the system and figure out how it works and use it, right? And understand how we interface with it and how it can help us and all that. We certainly don't need somebody standing in between us and the system, saying, pay me. That's not the way that my God would design things. I don't know about yours. So we need to begin to break down that paradigm. And again, if I can sort of take things, bring things over the wall, bring things over the paywall. So begin to bring things, from nature over that paywall and show you how important they are, show you how efficacious they are, show you how much they can help with your health. Now I'm breaking down that wall, and that wall will fall. And that's kind of what I think is happening, bigger picture. So it's super spiritual. It's super cool. It's super in our benefit. It's super healthy. It's going to result in a lot more information. It's going to result in a lot of, let's say, people like me who have been out here kind of jumping up and down and screaming and, saying, look at all this stuff. And, this, first of all, if you're money oriented, there's so much here to go make money on because it's new. No one's doing it yet. The pharmaceutical, all these big players are like, they really can't do it because it's, disruptive. If they get into this, then they'll drop the wall on their own, right? So they've got to kind of keep us back and hold us back. But anyway, that wall is falling down. So it's going to be, fun to watch that happen. It truly is humbling. It almost blows me away to watch it fall because it's something that a lot of us have worked so hard for so long to, let's say, get into your awareness, to begin to have you understand the power of God and the power of God's expression in nature and the cool system that, God built for us. Should be our natural kind of medicine system, right? So it's so robust and so wonderful. But anyway, you guys will see it. So we're on the right track. Things are falling down. So we'll leave it here today. We'll be back next week with another, more specific master regulatory system, endocannabinoid, more specific, let's say, talk about, a health aspect for you. So anyway, we'll see you next week. Bye.